Hello and welcome to this week's review of My Hero Academia Vigilantes. This week I'm reviewing Volume 7 of the manga, and we kick off this review as we always do with these reviews by talking about the positives and the headline positives. All the big things I enjoyed about this particular volume, which I'm going to discuss over the course of this video. I enjoyed the exploration of the character of Captain Celebrity during this volume. I like that they kept the wilder, crazier vibes from the prior volume, at least to a certain extent, and I hope this volume marks a turning point of the character for Crawler. Now, I will admit, dear listener, that this review may be on the shorter side of things because I don't really feel as though there's much to discuss here. Now, this isn't a slight against the volume, but this is a volume that ends on a cliffhanger and is almost exclusively focused on one particular event and one character. The focus of all of this is so narrow that there's not a whole lot for me to really discuss in greater detail in quite the same way as I did in previous volumes. And I don't want this review to be just me recounting and repeating and reciting events that you will have seen in the volumes up until this point, the episodes up until this point, I should say. When I do these big volume or series reviews, it's me just talking about all the things I liked or disliked rather than giving you some kind of play-by-play analysis of everything. So, with that said, let us get into actually discussing the content of the particular volume itself, the meat of the particular volume itself. And one of the things I really did love with this volume was the way that it developed and explored the character of Captain Celebrity. Now, this is a character that I really enjoyed almost from the moment that they were introduced. I feel that they represent a side of hero culture that isn't really explored all that much. Certainly not in the context of My Hero Academia Vigilantes, and isn't really that far explored within the broader spectrum of superhero fiction. Or at least not without getting into more overtly satirical or anti-superhero kind of territory. Oh, these characters do exist, and they are decently common, but they're not really explored in quite this way. This is a character that is selfish. They are an unheroic hero. Their job is to save the day and look good whilst doing it, and that's what rules them, that's what commands them. For them, being a hero is a job, but a job that they are damned good at, and a job that they will enjoy. You could argue that they are a selfish person, but at the end of the day, the way the hero industry works in Japan, and from what we understand about it on a global level, at the end of the day, it makes sense that he is as selfish as he is, that he acts the way that he does do, because this is an industry where being seen is the key, almost more so than just saving people itself. You gotta save people and put on a show whilst doing it. You need to make it look as spectacular and heroic and adventurous and exciting as possible, as that is what will rise you up the hero ranks, and the higher up you go through the hero ranks, the more money that you'll end up making from the government and from sponsorship deals and what have you. And he, as a character, is very much a product of his environment and a reflection of it. Hero culture, as we know it in My Hero Academia, is something of a subversion, a mirror, an alteration, something that is based upon our real world's celebrity culture. So he's very much the reflection of that in its truest form. Now, he's not a totally selfish person, as let's be honest, if he was, he would never have become a superhero in the first place, and even if he was, he would have kept to jobs and such that are far safer for him to do. He wouldn't dedicate himself to putting his life into great difficulty and great harm's way, into quite the extent that we've seen of him throughout the entire run of his time on this series. You know, he's not someone who's just taking the small jobs and making them like the biggest thing in the world. He's not saving people from other heroes, so to speak, and interrupting them and stealing their victories. He really only intervenes with other heroes and vigilantes when they're bollocking someone up and they need him. He isn't just here for the big money side of things, and let's be honest, if he was really here for the big money side of things, he could probably have just gotten away by just being a standard celebrity more so than just a hero one. Whilst he is a hero and does heroic things, he himself is not heroic. He isn't really doing all of this out the sake of dogma or a belief, outside your standard believing in law and order and the rule of law and due process and all that. Captain Celebrity isn't All Might. He's not a character that aspires to be this greater thing. All Might wants to be the symbol of peace, to inspire new generations, to give people hope and a sense of justice and hope that there is good in the world. He isn't Knuckle Duster, a character that wants to clean up the streets and defeat villains that the heroes won't touch. Captain Celebrity does this because he's damned good at it, and let's be honest, there's worse ways to make money. When he is heroic, he's doing it because the job requires him to be. The whole thing of, mind if I drop in, as he, would fly down to defeat some kind of bad guy. Or when he's, trying to save people from a burning building or from a sinking ship, he always presents himself in almost this Superman-esque way, in this way that's heroic and inspiring to really draw people in, to really make people see what he really is, or rather see the superhero side of him. I believe there's a character in the Powerpuff Girls cartoon from way back in the day that had a similar kind of thing, like a hero that presents themselves as being super heroic, when deep down they're kind of a little bit of a scumbag, they're kind of a bit cowardly, and they're not really all that. Though with here, this is a guy that actually is trying to save the day rather than manipulate events. Now, in this volume, we get a better insight as to who Captain Celebrity really is deep down. Sure, he's still selfish, but he's still someone who does mean well. They aren't doing this because it is right, but of course, being a superhero and doing this kind of stuff, it's better than being a villain and better than being a crook. We get a clearer idea as to who he is, what his true personality really is, besides what we've seen up of him till now. The hero, the brash hero, the selfish celebrity wannabe. He is someone who deep down can be incredibly compassionate for other people, as we see when he's trying to protect the little girls. But he's also someone who can be protective of others to an almost reckless and life-endangering way. To give a comparison, if someone was being threatened by a gunman, they would not try to stop the person from shooting, they would jump in the way in the bullet. They would actually throw their life away to try and save someone else if push came to shove, more so than really getting into the fight to try and stop the thing from happening in the first place. I'll grant you that's not the best comparison, but as we see over the course of this volume, this is a character that really does put his body and life on the line to save others in a way that if he was totally selfish, he really wouldn't do so. Oh sure, there's still the moment a few episodes ago, it was a case of, oh, don't look at me, I don't look good, but you get the idea. That's ultimately just a reflection of the fact he grew up and has lived in a world where he has to look good and he has to look the hero. Of course, over the course of this volume, he gains, or he unlocks a greater sense of self-awareness. He knows that he has done stupid things, and he does wish that he could be a better person. And I do feel as if I'm being honest, he gives himself a bit of an easy ride. Like a couple episodes ago, we had the episode where he was looking back at his past. He was looking at his past mistakes and his past issues, and I think that he was giving himself a bit too much credit, that he was really just being manipulated and that he was just a victim of the whims of others, when I'll be honest, I don't really feel that is the case. Oh sure, him getting tricked into a honeypot by people who he thought were his friends, yeah, that's scummy, that's nasty, but at the end of the day, he still shagged around, and the reason why he's in Japan is because he got caught shagging around the whole media storm that came as a result of that. He's not a bad guy, but at the same time, he's not a guy that's really been showering himself in glory given his past activities. Oh yeah, there is still the thing about him being taken to court by a villain because they walloped them a bit too hard, but at the end of the day, like the underline at the start of this, he's kind of in exile due to his activities and just being a bit of a shit, more so than being some kind of poor manipulated soul. Okay, sure, we can also put this down to a certain degree of personal bias from his part, a case of unreliable narrator, but it's still there. We know who he really is deep down, and at the end of the day, whilst he is a well-meaning person, that still doesn't take away from the fact he can do bloody stupid things, but in this particular volume, we do get the self-reflection of, yes, I've made some horrible mistakes, but now I want to try and make amends for that, and I want to go out as a real hero, and not just someone that got caught shagging their friend's girlfriend or whatever, and now here I am in exile away from my family. Now, the kind of exploration that we get with him is something I really wish we'd see with other similar characters in anime and manga and comics and cartoons. Like Mr. Satan from Dragon Ball. We know what his life is like from various different things that have been said in guidebooks and whatever. We know that it's fairly tragic from what we know about So, I know getting a similar kind of explanation with him, I should say, would be great, but what we get here is still good for what it is. It's still something I really do enjoy. I enjoy seeing his life before he became a hero. This is something I did talk about in a very recent review, so I'm not going to go too deep into it, but by all means, watch your previous reviews. And it is there that we see this compassionate side of him that really does want to care for others, even if there's still this showmanship, extroverted side of him. He has a problem with being a bit of an utter prat, but he still means well, and he's a character who at the end of the day is very easily led and manipulated by others, not really knowingly, rather innocently. And that's similar to Crawler to a degree. They are both two characters that ultimately end up moving on the will and impression of others. Captain Celebrity got pushed around a lot by his friends back home and by Makato, and now Crawler's getting pushed around by Knuckle Duster, Popstep and Makato. Although in Crawler's sense, these people around him seem to be meaning well, apart from his mother, but that's a whole other discussion for all of a series of events. But with Makato, you do know that she's still ultimately manipulating both of them for her own ends. Oh sure, she herself might mean well, but she's still ultimately doing all of this for a good grade at university, so, you know, they're both being manipulated in their own way. It just so happens that in this particular series of events that Captain Celebrity's made this realization before the pair of them, or rather before Crawler, and is trying his best to make sure that if this is going to be the end for him, he's going to go out on his own terms. Now, I would have liked to see more of his backstory, maybe replace some of these scenes with the pro heroes just standing around and talking, with more flashbacks and insights into Captain Celebrity's life, as, if nothing else, this would take this whole series of events away from the realm of the whole, well, character's gonna die, so let's make people care about them problem that we seem to have with anime and manga, where we only ever seem to develop a character ahead of them dying. You know, why develop a character well ahead of time and make our audience engage with them, sympathise with them, feel real connection with them, so that when they're in moments of peril, that we feel this sense of dread and hope and fear that nothing bad's going to happen to them, when instead we can leave all the character development only a matter of minutes or seconds before they die? Like, I just don't get it. I really don't get it. It's just one of the... I'm not a big anime and manga fan, but the fact that it's happened so many times just blows my fucking mind. But in any case, with that said, all of this episode, or rather all this volume, is about Captain Celebrity maturing and realising there's more to life than being a hero, and that being a hero is being more than just saving people. He isn't going to go full tilt into All Might or Superman level heroics in terms of at least the presentation of these kind of things, but at least you get the idea that he's going to try and be a better role model, to fight and die for something bigger than just a paycheck or a merchandising deal. How successful or not he'll end up being with all of this is hard to say, because he could quite easily die in the next couple episodes or so, and even if he doesn't, I don't imagine there's going to be some grand epilogue where we find out that Captain Celebrity became a better guy, but I suppose we don't really need to see that. We don't need to see him make the full journey, we just need to see him making that, so that if he does survive all of this, we do get the sense that he is going to try and become something more than just that guy that was popular for a little bit saving people. You know, the guy that kind of screwed his career up but then tried to make a second go of it. That he wants to be someone that people can be inspired by, or at the very least that his family can be inspired by, which is cute in its own way. Now, beyond this, I do like the fact that this particular volume does keep with the wilder tone and moments from the previous volume. I am curious to see how the audiences will react when the anime comes out and we get to these crazier moments with cat buses and Thomas the Tank engine-themed villains, if and when the series gets that far, as it really helps sell the humorous tone that this particular series has. And as well as that, it ends up giving its own unique flavour versus the main series, as well as in another way it gives it its own sense of continuity of each particular volume and each particular episode. Oh yeah, it can get a bit much, and I'm not best pleased by the fact that we had 2 gag episodes pretty much on the bounce, with events that are in almost happening exactly the same play by play. That the last episode, or part of the last episode from the previous volume, was versus a Thomas the Tank Engine villain, and then the first episode of this volume was pretty much the same thing with a different cartoon train character. But with that said, I do love the creativity that we have there. I'm not the kind of person who is, oh, Vigilantes is better than My Hero Academia. I'm not in that camp. But there are elements like this where it feels like it is for the better, that they are able to be more creative, that they are able to just go on these wild creative flights of fantasy that I really do like. One of the things that I do like about quirks as a superhero idea is that they're supposed to be wild and random things, that it's almost literally a roll a D100 and see which superhero power that you end up getting. Maybe it's something that could change the world, maybe it's something that make your life normally better, or maybe it'll be a horrible hindrance for you and the people around you. And something I dislike about the main series is that by the time we get into the latter half of it all that randomness, all that creativity is just gone, and more often than not, it just kind of boils down to fairly typical superhero-powered stuff, I should say. It's kind of superhero powers that we see countless times in other series. Oh, this person's got a super-powered flame power, this person's got a lightning power, this person's got an ice power, this person's got a thing that gets to freeze things in the air, like the physics gun from Garry's Mod. Like, these are all just very typical superhero powers. Great for what they are, and whilst they do lend themselves to exciting action sequences, they're not really that creative, and it doesn't really show a level of creative flair from the writers or the artists with this. Whereas this series, it does end up giving itself a bit more of a chance to get creative and get silly and get wacky and wild, giving it its own character and flavour. And it's something I do wish that there was more of, even within this volume. Especially when it came to the matter of the monsters that the Delivery Man / Scarred Man use. I mean, beyond anything else, it's kind of a bit of a break with theme when they think about it. Like, pretty much all the monsters we've seen thus far have been animal themed, and here we are with stuff that looks more like, you know, crap nomus just floating through the sky. Whereas everything we've had up to this point, you know, I think we could have had something a little more imaginative, a little more crazy, a little more creative. Like, imagine that instead of these flying crap nomus, instead it was an army of evil Thomas the Tank Engines swarming in to blow stuff up, or something equally as wild and creative and eccentric, or just literally anything more creative than just weird looking dinosaur things. That's a side of things I really wish was just explored more just in general this series. Because the artwork in this series, more often than not, is great. The action is well put together. And like I say, there are moments of this creative flair that when they do it, it looks good and leaves an impact. But it does feel like it's far too rare for me. Like in the previous volume, or rather the previous episode, we got the great bit where we could just see the delivery man just going nuts because his plan isn't working, and we've seen kind of similar kind of stuff since then. Like we had the moment with Sarah, whatever his name is, thinking back to being a kid and getting bullied because his quirk was inopportune, it was hurting people, and just the sheer mass of all these faces and these heads just laughing at him and screaming at him for being a bit of a fuck up. That stuff was great, and I wish we'd see more of that, but we don't. But, you know, we can only review what's in front of us, and what we have here is still great. That final shot for the cliffhanger looks fantastic. It's one of the rare moments where, even despite the fact I'm reading a translated version of it, the artwork, the fonts, the actual writing of the onomatopoeias for the explosion don't look out of place and look every bit as much a part of the original artwork as I'm sure the original characters in Japanese would have looked. And I do love that. And the artwork throughout has been fantastic, as usual, with this great sense of flair and character and just this, I don't want to say cartoonish, but there certainly is a feel of the characters feeling a lot more animated than, I will be blunt, it does feel as though they're going to be in the anime, but that's a discussion for a whole other video, which certainly is coming. Now, the last thing I did like about this particular volume was the fact that it does feel as though Crawler is starting, finally, after an extended break, to be more of an active presence within the story. I feel that he has been far too much of a passive presence throughout this series, and he's way too passive for a protagonist. He's not a proactive protagonist, and more often than not, action seems to happen around him, more so than him being an active participant in that action. He's not someone that's exploring into all these strange and dark things that are happening. They just seem to fall at his lap, and then from there he just deals with them. But at least at this particular moment, in his past few episodes, it does feel as though he's being an active participant in it. He's not just waiting for some other superhero to come in and save the day. He's not just being a sidekick. He's trying to save the day as best as he can do, even if his powers don't really help and lend it to that particular situation. He's a character, a protagonist that spends far too much time off screen, more so than Midoriya when we come to think about it. And when he actually is on screen, he spends far too much time just getting jobbed about by other characters and doing stuff that's really, at the end of the day, kind of minor and uninteresting. Or at least to most people, like the weird stuff about arranging events and what have you. Oh yeah, I love that stuff, but yeah, this is still a superhero series, and the fact an extended period of it just feels like some kind of slice of life thing is just kind of frustrating, I suppose, for some people. But towards the end of this volume, like I say, it does feel like he's starting to become a little more proactive, and I do like that. I do like the character of Crawl. I think they're a refreshing difference, a different kind of character than what we have to with Midoriya, but I want to see them doing things. I got really pissed off and annoyed towards the start of this volume where it felt as though he wasn't doing anything. I hope that from this volume on we see more of him, and we see him being an active leader in his own life story and not some kind of passive observer, but that is a discussion for a whole other time. With that said, let's get into the negatives and the headline negatives. I think this volume wastes too many pages on advertising. I think it's odd to jump back to before the events in Hong Kong, and I'm kind of mixed on the cliffhanger with all things said and done. So, just quickly, at the end of this particular volume, there is a 6 pages just dedicated to adverts, just advertising other manga and anime series and other services, which you can kind of understand, as this thing isn't uncommon with paperback books, but that is a good 6 episodes that could have been spent on other things. Of course, technically you would argue that it's more like 8 pages that are wasted, maybe 7, but it really is something that could have been used for other things. Maybe make a few of these episodes longer, or alternatively just give us some behind the scenes info. Take some of the shots of, oh, these are the concept arts for these different characters and these different designs, as they have done in previous volumes, but here it's just taken up by advertisements for other series, which I'm sure are great, but yeah, I don't care for that. The fact there are that many pages wasted just kind of blows my mind, but hey, this is just for this particular volume, and wouldn't have been an issue if you were reading this in Weekly Shonen Jump or what have you, or whatever it is that this is distributed in. Now, a more pertinent issue is the fact I find it just really odd that this volume, it takes place in the past. Like, we're jumping back in time to before the end of the prior volume. Now, I could understand it if this was just for the sake of a flashback to contextualise as to why Knuckle Duster was there, why he was in Hong Kong in the first place, and then we jump back into what was going to happen there, but we never did. It was such a major plot twist to see Knuckle Duster back after such an extended break, and then bringing them back for the flashback. It just feels so weird to me. I really don't know how to describe it, but it just feels so strange to me that you'd end the previous volume with such a major twist, then immediately the volume thereafter, you'd undo it. Well, not even undo it, you just would ignore it and just go back in time to other things and to not really build anything to contextualise or set up anything that's coming next to the stuff in Hong Kong. It just feels so bloody odd to me that I don't know why they did it. And we move on from what could have been this exciting action sequence, which I still hope that we're actually going to end up seeing, to everyone just planning to put a show on to say goodbye to Captain Celebrity. And whilst I am a sucker for that kind of stuff, it feels so strange to just go from this really big, oh my god, did that really just happen kind of cliffhanger to more what feels like palate cleanser stuff. After what feels like 2 volumes of almost exclusively palate cleanser stuff. It's like this series actively doesn't want to advance and actively doesn't want to move forward. I really don't get it. I truly don't, but it does feel like they're just padding out for time here. They're just trying to drag this out as far as possible, or, oh crap, we forgot to do something. Like, all this stuff with Captain Celebrity could easily have been happening simultaneously with the stuff with Hong Kong. We just had to put a little thing that said, meanwhile, back in Japan, and it would have been fine. It would have been fine. It would have explained why other heroes weren't over there helping Captain Knuckle Duster or whoever. They weren't helping Knuckle Duster to say, sorry, I got the names mixed up. But you get the idea. I don't understand why they decided to just blue ball the audience with all of that. I really don't know it. But whatever, I'm sure that depending on how the anime goes, people will be shocked and surprised by that. But I've got feelings exactly how that's going to go. And as far as the cliffhanger itself is concerned, look, it is a great and arresting image. I think it looks fantastic, but one, from where we are sat with these volumes, we got another 4 months or so before we get back into this, because Vigilantes is going to be a 13-episode run, which, you know, given that most recent trailer, it looks like they're going to try and do 26 episodes worth of material, half as many episodes, which is concerning. but something we'll discuss in a future video. But even without that weight, it feels weird that this is the first time we're ending a volume like this, that we're ending it with such an explicit cliffhanger, that this is a cliffhanger that will carry over to the next volume. And that means that the first couple episodes or so will be dedicated to just wrapping up all the stuff that we've had at the Sky Egg. And whatever ends up coming thereafter is either going to have to be heavily truncated and narrowed down to fit into a volume, or we're going to have more stuff that's going to hang over into other volumes. Like, it's more of a structural issue more than anything else, because, again, I like the image of it. I like the spectacle of it. But still, to end on a cliffhanger rather than a more self-contained ending, I really don't know. And it feels like, for the sake of... Hell, you could have cut all the stuff with Crawler farting about chasing after or getting chased by the Thomas the Tank Engine train rip-off thing, and then... whatever, this is getting to get into how I would have done it territory, and I don't want to get into that. With that said, let's get into the overview. I think that this is a fine volume. I think this is a great volume, but it's an odd way to end itself. Like I suppose if you're reading this in Shonen Jump or whatever it's called, you would only have a week or so to wait to see what happened. But from our point of view, we got about 4 months. And even beyond all that, I still think there was more material needed to make this volume work. I mean, it ultimately almost exclusively centered around Captain Celebrity and this gig at the Sky Egg. As fun as that stuff was, I think there needed to be more here. And that maybe just having a few more scenes where Crawler just doing something and not being passive would have really made things a lot more interesting. With that said, however, it's time to get into Comment Corner! It's time for Comment Corner, reading comments from the previous video. We got one from Big X1, and their comment goes, "This is a great volume. It isn't my favourite of the entire series, but I like a lot that it does, and it feels like the series is back on track after the other volumes felt kind of lost with what they were doing. Feels like when Knuckle Duster left, the writers didn't know what to do with Crawler and the rest. Thank you for your comment," and I have to kind of agree with you. The past few volumes, whilst they haven't been totally directionless, it does feel as though not much of a muchness has really happened. Whilst I do enjoy all the misadventures that they've been involved in, I do feel even with those there are some missed opportunities, and it feels odd that a lot of the things that we've had over the past few volumes have only felt tangentially related to the big wider mystery with the Monster Factory or whatever it's called. And now here we are, things are starting back into... Oh no, wait, no they're not. No they're not, because we're going back in time to see what happened with Captain Celebrity, when we could easily have just done all of this as being a simultaneous thing, but that's what I've said many, many times in the past. Now, we're only, from the point this video is released, about a couple of weeks away from the release of the My Hero Academia Vigilantes anime series. Now, as such, there isn't going to be any reviews per se over the next couple of weeks. I might do one before the series itself is released, but the next video I'm going to be doing is not going to be review related. It's more about things to be aware of for anyone who isn't familiar with Vigilantes as regards to what the anime itself may look like, because I got some thoughts, and, well, it's also the fact that I think a lot of people are going to be coming into this thinking it's just My Hero Academia version 2, when there's a lot about it which is very much not Vigilantes Mark 2, but hey, you'll soon see what I'm talking about with that video, but knowing me, there's a good chance the video won't get made, so yeah, we don't know what's going to happen. We've got about 2 weeks or so before all this ends up going to... the new series. So we'll see how it goes. But anyway, between then and now, I'll say thank you all for listening, thank you all for watching, and see you next time. Goodbye!
Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, favourite, subscribe, click the bell, and do all the YouTubey stuff that YouTube wants you to do. Go on, it'll do me a power of good. Until next time, my friends, goodbye!